and it's just great to be green. Now on that note, I'm going to introduce somebody I hope to be spending a lot more time with come the 1st of July next year. Senator Scott Ludlam, who's done a lot of work on a number of issues, and not the least of which is to see this nasty piece of legislation that looks like it's going to go down in the Senate. So welcome Senator Scott Ludlam.
A very good speakers to turn up and have to speak after. Thank you. Thanks very much for coming along tonight. Any excuse to come to Melbourne is a good one for me. I love this town. I've never spent that much time in St Kilda, but it's great to be here, particularly in this beautiful, spunky little venue. So thanks very much to the organisers and everybody who put this together. Would like to particularly thank Sue for the invite. I happen to be passing through because tomorrow's a very important day, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But what a wonderful candidate to launch right here to actually get this campaign underway. People have been working on this for months. Probably most of the people in this room have been making a big contribution for a long time. But tonight we're here for that specific purpose. Why would it be that we're getting such spiky polls? And I don't believe them either. I thought actually there was a little bit of an unwritten rule that we weren't going to mention the 17% word. Somebody went and did it.
No one likes Gillard, no one likes Abbott.
Yeah. Do not believe those kind of polls. This is actually going to come down to the wire. That point Richard made right at the end about what it comes down to after all the work is said and done is having a smiling face, a green t-shirt, powder vote card, and somebody to welcome you into the booth, and that's worth maybe 2% on the booths that we cover, and that is how we get senators elected in this country. There's a huge amount of work going on around the place, and it really is quite something to be a part of it. The focus is on Capitol Hill, it's on Canberra at the moment, but let's not forget why we as Greens have managed to somehow walk through 10 years of hostile media, of attacks from the pundits who said we were irrelevant, from hard right-wing religious groups who in my view don't actually represent their constituency very well, groups like the ACL that sound positively un-Christian most of the time, of the stuff that's coming out of their mouth. We've copped a bucketing, and we are this campaign, and we will in the next fortnight. We really are going to cop it because people can start to see what's coming, and yet somehow here we are in the position where we are on the threshold of something really quite powerful. And that is not because of the work of 5 senators. That is because we are a large volunteer organisation that runs on love and that has very, very deep roots. We're not a big corporate party. We are not taking money from the tobacco industry or the coal industry. We are able to speak our minds. We are able to stick together and link arms when necessary. We have councillors all over the state and all over the country, and that's something as a Western Australian I'm keen to learn more about how you did that. In WA, we elected a senator in 1984, and we've actually, it's taken us a long time to catch up on local government. But the Vid Greens have very, very deep roots in feminism, in the peace movement, in the anti-nuclear movement, travelling right back through the Cold War and before. And that is the reason that we're here tonight on the threshold of what it is that we might be facing on the 21st of August, because we are now, I think, reaping seeds that have been sown for a couple of generations over the issues that we're talking about now. We are not moving towards the centre. We are not a party that's becoming more mainstream. But Australia is actually starting to catch up and to wake up to some of the things that we've been saying all along. You cannot run an infinite growth economy on a finite planet and simply sack and asset strip the natural capital, if you like to use language like that, and expect at the end of the day that there's going to be anything for our children, because there won't be. We've been saying that all along. The country is actually catching up. Sue asked me briefly to just mention what it was that we launched this morning, and one of the great joys of there only being 5 of us is that we're each carrying 8 or 9 portfolios, and we right. Let's have a quick tip of the hat to our state colleagues who do an extraordinary amount of work under a great deal of pressure and with vastly less resources than the senators get. I'm presuming you folk are working with 1 or 2 staff members each. Okay. That is a really big deal, and having that tier of government there, you've got 3 exceptional MPs, and I understand you're putting something rather remarkable together for your state election at the end of the year. I'm going to believe it when I see it, but every time I speak to these folks I go, okay. It really sounds like there's quite an extraordinary campaign brewing to really take a bite out of state parliament and really consolidate our presence there. And you folk are an absolute inspiration, working on much less resources. so each of us has 8 or 9 portfolios. Thank you. That was my derailed train of thought there. One of the ones that I've felt really quite privileged to work on has been law and justice issues, and we conducted a Senate inquiry that reported last year unanimously, and that's one of the beauties of the behind-the-scenes stuff, is you can work quite collaboratively with people around access to justice and around structural asymmetries in our justice system that basically really hold down people of disadvantage, people of colour, women. We've got a very, very out-of-balance justice system, and it's an issue that any one of us could walk into tomorrow in a car accident, a tenancy dispute, a mortgage dispute, a relationship dispute, and suddenly realise that our legal system is actually a bit stuffed. And it's stuffed most of all for Aboriginal people and Aboriginal women in particular. We're borrowing an idea that Tom Calma, the Australian Human Rights Commissioner, started popularising last year that has been introduced in some of the most conservative jurisdictions in the world, places like Texas and Kansas. They're now rolling it out in 10 US states, in Canada and in the UK. We reckon it's absolutely time to bring it here. It's called justice reinvestment, and what it effectively is intervening right at the very beginning and trying to prevent crime and putting our resources and our expenditure and our interest and putting our money's where our mouth is before the crime is committed, and looking out for people who are starting to fall through the net before we have to go through the catastrophic human and financial and social expense of imprisoning people. And we have this runaway prison population in Australia that I think would go unrecorded apart from at election times, when the two old parties line up in the most appalling way and try and outbid each other for the number of people they can lock up for more and more trivial offences. This is not talking about abolishing jail for serious or violent criminals, because obviously that remains as your backstop. Justice reinvestment is about going into areas of disadvantage and targeting your funding on social programs, on youth work, on counselling, and on support for the legal safety net that I believe is a citizenship entitlement of all Australians. And that's what's called justice reinvestment. Take it out of the goddamn prison system, or the prison industrial complex if you want to call it that, and put it where it's actually needed. And they are trying this, and they found in the United States that there are prisons that they haven't needed to build because they've gone into the areas of disadvantage. Crime rates are falling, incarceration rates are falling. It is time we brought that here. Aboriginal incarceration in Australia is 28 times what you would expect per capita. 28 times. Nearly 40% of Aboriginal people in jail, the prison population in Western Australia. It's as high in South Australia and the NT, I'm not sure what it is here, but I'm sure it's appalling. And that has to stop, that we are jailing people for utterly trivial crimes. There was a kid who was remanded last year in Western Australia for being in receipt of a stolen Freddo frog. And that is what is having Aboriginal minors, children, taken into paddy wagons and driven to court. So justice reinvestment, I've got a couple of copies of that. That is a seed that we planted today. It'll take a little bit of time to bear fruit. But I'd just like to briefly remind you of what happens when you plant those seeds and then put your shoulder to it and work hard. As Richard, thanks for tipping me off that you were going to steal the thunder. So somebody mentioned earlier, the high-speed rail thing. That's something Bob's been working on for a while, something I've been working on for a while. It's an idea that the time has come. So do a little bit of searching and you'll see what's going on online. There are countries in the world that are seeing what is going on, coming down the curve 20 years from now and saying air travel is probably over in the way that we've known it, unless something really remarkable happens through climate change, but more importantly peak oil, that is about to completely kick us sideways. And Australia is among the least prepared countries in the entire world for that. Places like Spain, China, but also Morocco, some places you wouldn't necessarily expect. Putting in rapid rail and preparing for an age where oil is not cheap and where it costs you $500 to fill up your car. And this morning, the government said, yeah, okay, we'll call it something else. We won't ever allow ourselves to acknowledge that the Greens had it right, and we'll introduce it. And basically, they rolled our policy initiative out this morning. And we said, I'm not calling that a backflip, I'm calling that acceptance of the bleeding obvious. So congratulations.
The Liberals just announced the same thing.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We should jail them for copyright.
Here's another thing the Liberals just did. As Richard said, this is a campaign that's been going for about 2 years in terms of my involvement. It's got a longer history than that, obviously. And this is a beautiful example of an open source, how should I put this? An open source or crowdsourced campaign of self-organising grassroots, online and offline, but mainly online actually, to take on a proposal so objectionable that we started with a small group like EFA, and I am going to name check Colin Jacobs at this point. Electronic Frontiers Australia, if you've never heard of them, maybe after tonight you will, and it's important that you do. A very, very important online civil libertarian and social justice organisation, if I may describe it thus. And Colin, who's knee-deep in Richard's campaign at the moment, has played a really important role in putting the counter-proposals to mandatory censorship of the internet for all Australians. That we all get a PG-rated internet because there are some things on the net that you don't want kids to see. And this campaign has spread from quite humble beginnings to the point where the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton intervened and gave Conroy a belting a couple of months ago and said, we'd like to show you how to tackle serious pornography and violent crime online without necessarily introducing mandatory censorship of the internet. And the campaign spreads right across those axes, from the grassroots all the way up to the United States government and everybody in between, including Google, militant librarians, sections of the union movement, and even child protection agencies. And tonight we won. Joe Hockey has announced that they will oppose the filter. They will actually vote against it. They won't just say comments and get some headlines. They're going to vote against it. Stephen Conroy no longer has the numbers in the Senate, and that project is effectively dead if we can trust that commitment, and we're down, we're going to hold them to that. But this is an example of what I'm talking about. Nobody decided that campaign had to happen. It happened because it was needed. The Greens played a role in that at a local, at a state, at a federal level, and I think we should celebrate tonight that we appear to have won that thing, and that maybe be a couple of years before another government attempts something similarly stupid in the future. I feel like a glass of mulled wine, and yes. I bet you do too. So I'm going to get off the stage. Please keep at it. Please keep doing everything you're doing, great or small, because you never really know which ripple in the pond it is that is going to tip this thing over and take Australia into the renewable future. The last seed I would like to plant. 65 years ago, tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning, the United States Army or Air Force dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima and killed 100,000 people in the blink of an eye. 65 years tomorrow is Hiroshima Day. Richard and I, and hopefully a large number of you, are going to be at a vigil at St Paul's Cathedral from 7 AM that the Medical Association for Prevention of War are hosting and organising. We're going to be talking about abolition of these weapons of genocide that should quite simply be set to rest once and for all. That is the nature of the issues that we work on as Greens. Everything that traverses all the issues that the speakers focused on tonight. I'm really proud to be part of it. I'm really proud to be up here and to meet all of you. Go Greens.
Scott's a bit taller than me. Perhaps you could come back, Scott. Just quickly come back.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. I needed a step to get on stage, but
probably had quite enough of me.
Oh, absolutely not.
Sorry, sound guy.
I just wanted to pass on. Can you ask you to pass on to the senators how proud we are of the work that you've all been doing, and acknowledge the what our party is grassroots senators and a collection of people, and all of that work is very important. And I want you to know that we're very proud of you. So thank you.